it goes. So number 1 says, did you feel prepared for the outcome of the 2016 election? You guys seeing that? I don't think
I can see it. It shows me, it just says I can't vote, but it shows.
It does? I don't think I can either. What about you, Tatum?
It says I can't vote, but however,
Yeah,
I was not prepared for the outcome of the 2016 election.
Okay. I felt the same way. So I know that's one of the reasons we're doing this tonight.
Exactly.
I know that I can't presume that everyone feels the same way, but I think most people watching want a certain person to win and a certain person to lose. And assuming they're on the same page that I know you and I are, I don't expect us to need this trauma plan in the most negative way. Now, I know you're going to prepare us because you're going to explain that no matter what happens, there's still trauma.
Yes, ma'am.
Not even just trauma for other people, but still trauma for ourselves too, even if it goes our way. So there's a good reason for us to focus on how to close that cycle. But one of the lessons was we can think we know what's going to happen. Hi, Paula. And it may not go. So I was just talking with my husband about it. And we were saying, I don't think it's going to go this way. I don't think it's going to go the way we don't want it to go. But that would make it even more traumatic. We know from experience if it doesn't. So I said, for me, it's important to do this, even though it's scary to do it, because part of me feels a little superstitious. Like, I don't even want to say the words, what if he wins?
Right.
What if my guy loses? I don't even want to say that. And for months, I didn't, until several people said, Lowry, you've got to do something to prepare in case it. And so that's why you and I started talking about it. And I know there are just so many people, even more so than 2016, I feel, that have worked so hard. It strikes me every time I'm at the polls, the people in line, the people, Danita making 200,000 texts and phone calls. And there's so many people working so hard. So I just feel like there will be even more people devastated this time. So it is important for us to prepare, even though, do you feel any of that superstition? Are you afraid to even go there in your mind?
Part of me is afraid to go there in my mind. And the other part of me is like, you know what? We have to continue to speak positivity into the environment, speak what we want to see happen.
Yeah. So. Yes, and Courtney's here, and yes, you guys are typing in. You chat together in there and with us, and Tatum and I. You're just gonna see us, so you can do whatever you want. No pants required for this Zoom. So we're answering these poll questions. You guys should see them. And Tatum and I were agreeing that we were not prepared. Now, some of you may have been prepared in 2016. I was not, and so it hit me harder. I was with my daughter, my whole family went to the polls. I was so excited, mostly because she was with me and I wanted it so bad for her, and it meant so much and it felt so certain. So there was that element of it just being so much more devastating. And you guys feel free to share your experience in that chat too. The question number 2, did you feel traumatized by the outcome of the election? I think a lot of us are here because we did. And so we realize the need to prepare just in case. And no matter what happens, like Tatum said, there is some trauma still to recover from, and other people will be traumatized. And this whole process has been traumatic, even if it phases out. And we all have other traumas. And so I believe your conversation is going to help us, and no matter what we're going through. Yeah, so for me it was, and I will say I posted earlier that letter. Let me see. I started making a list that even if Trump wins, in my mind, let me see if I can find it. Even if Trump wins, these are the good things. And so my list says, and some people like this idea of making a list. Can you see it there, Tatum?
I
Even if,
can. I still see the poll.
oh, you still see the poll? Okay. I think it's sharing. Even if he wins, yeah, share screen. Here we go. Even if he wins, I still have a loving, healthy family. I have a safe place to live. I can keep doing good things for others. And I believe this, even if he wins, and this is hard, getting harder to believe some days, but I believe there are still more good people than bad people. And when I'm out there doing the good things, I'm seeing them. So that helps too. And when I'm in this group of people and I'm surrounded by good people doing good things. I have my doggy and he doesn't care anything about politics, and he doesn't feel the stress. So watching him play is, it's so freeing and joyful. And love is actually, I love my favorite movie. Love is actually all around. It's so hard to feel sometimes, but it is. And no matter who wins this election, our group, Lake Highlands Area Moms and More Against Racism, is going to keep making good trouble. Now, I think just as far as our group goes, we're going to work even harder if a certain person wins, but we can do even more things if it goes our way, you know? Anyway, we might take a tiny little relaxation breath.
Very important to do.
Maybe either way we should do that. But now I did want to ask you, Tatum, before we move on. It struck me, I know this list comes from privilege.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not Black, I'm not gay, I'm not an immigrant, I'm not trans. And so here we go. I think we're back together.
Yep.
So I get that this election feels like life and death to lots of people. It feels like that to me on behalf of other people. And so I don't want to appear insensitive by making that list. But is it right that even someone who's afraid for their safety, it's okay to pause and make a list like that?
It's very important to pause and make that list, because you have to recognize that there are still options, there's still positive avenues for you to go to, even when your whole world has been shook. And so it's important for a person who is Black, who is trans, who is gay, who is any of those things you listed, sets themselves up to not focus on all their options that put them at risk, and instead to focus on the good things and the positive things in their life, so that they can better protect themselves from the latter.
Yeah, that's how I feel. Like I can't focus. I tell you what, Tatum, I don't want to talk too much, but I felt like the weight of the world was on me every day after that election to save people. Oh, I'm not talking to you, Alexa. It'd be nice if she could help me out. No, I felt like so for me, this memory is burned in my brain of going up to school the next day to pick up my kids, and the moms and couple dads gathered outside as usual. And I was devastated, and they knew I would be, because I was the one that had been wearing my Hillary stuff to all the soccer games, and the only one. And how are you, Lowry? And I was just, hard. And a good friend of mine said, oh, this happens every 4 years. And in my heart, I said, you know what? I will be okay, but a lot of people won't be okay. People will die. And I knew they would. I knew they would die because of the hate. And so then every week whatever he did, I was writing the opposite on my car and parking at my job in Highland Park so that everybody who drove by would see, welcome immigrants, Muslim, shalom to everyone, salam alaikum, whatever it was he was doing. I was going to the airport, drop everything, go to the airport and welcome the Muslims, everything. And that's why I changed my life because of it. I got involved in learning about racism, anti-racism. I started empowering girls through Girl Scouts, but it was exhausting. And I realized that's probably not super healthy to feel like, okay, every time he does something, I have to react in a positive way.
Right. Yeah, you have to set yourself up to not have a reaction, but instead have a response.
Okay.
Because reactions can get exhausting.
So a response is more planned.
Yep, it's more planned, and it's as I've said before, it is where you've done your research and you're prepared for your comeback. You have facts, you have data. You're not just going on emotions. You're not just going because he said this, I'm going to say the exact opposite. It's because he said this, I'm going to prove that is wrong with this information.
Mm-hmm.
And that may still present as the ways you did it. However, you're not exhausting yourself in doing it because you prepared for it.
Yeah. So a lot of you guys are saying it was hard and you cried. It was hard to go to work, hard to go to school. So that is one of the questions on the survey here, is what are your plans the day after the election? And I do want to say, Tatum and I were talking, for this election, what I've heard is it's not going to be election day. It's more likely going to be election week. So we need to be telling everyone we know that to be patient and to be calm. It's not going to be election day. It's going to be election week, partly because so many more people are voting by mail, and 22 states don't start counting mail-in ballots until election day. So it's going to take them a lot longer to do that this year. They're not prepared. They've never had these kind of numbers of mail-in ballots. So we want those votes to count. And so we're going to be patient. So let's see, what did our polls say? Go to work as usual. That's hard. No matter, well, I hope it's good. Take a personal day, no matter what. Some of you are doing that. Can you see the results of the polls, or am I supposed to share? I think I end the poll and then share it with you. So I'll give you all a chance to finish the poll and then I'll share the results. But it looks like some of you are taking a personal day no matter what. And a lot of you, most of you are saying, I don't think we'll know the results yet. So we may still be watching the news a little bit. So go ahead, Tatum.
I have taken a personal day no matter what.
Me too.
And actually, I have taken 2 personal days. One for my own self-care so I can take my breath, and 2 so I can prepare to support others. So I can be ready and offer all the support that's going to be needed on the latter side of this.
Yes. My husband has taken a personal day, which is very unusual. And I, partly it's because he plans to be up late at our election party or whatever. But partly it's because, and I told him, I said, hey, just in case, will you please make me your priority on that day? Because he knows how upset I can be about what's going to happen. So yeah, it's just a lot. It's just very personal to a lot of people, especially people who put so much work into it too. So that's a whole other set of people to be concerned about. But Tatum, let me give it over to you. So I'll leave the poll up, and that way people can answer those questions if they haven't finished. And I'm gonna make you the host so you can share your screen. So Tatum, I haven't introduced her, is our awesome, she is a therapist who has been leading support groups for our uh, both our people of color group, support group online, and white allies group. And it's been so great to have her support these past few months. Anyone who's been in her support group, we all feel better afterwards. So what we promise is that the day after the election, at some point, I'll create some kind of Zoom chat for us. So whoever wants to, no matter how they're feeling, we can talk through some things together. And Tatum will check in with us the next day too. So that'll be good. That's another good thing Heather is saying. A lot of people have family members that feel differently. So part of the trauma recovery is even helping restore some relationships, no matter what. Okay, so Tatum, you're the host now, right?
Yes, I have host staff.
Okay. I will let you share and I will mute myself.
Okay. Well, thank you, Laurie. Okay, so I am going to talk about the trauma cycle, the phases of trauma recovery, and then we'll open it up at the end for just an open conversation. What I'm going to do is follow the chat. So if you do have any questions, please just drop them in a chat and I will answer them as we go. So let's get started. So I'm going to talk about the various types of trauma, ignored and unaddressed trauma, as well as the trauma cycle, trauma response versus trauma recovery, and what happens to your body during trauma, and then the phases of trauma recovery. Is everyone still able to see my screen? We're still going? Okay. So trauma is something that affects everyone differently, and it has no target. So Laurie and I may experience the same situation and our trauma may manifest different. So it's important to recognize that this election specifically can affect Laurie as an acute traumatic event, meaning it's just a single stressful, dangerous event. And within 30 days, she's able to move on and she's doing better. It may affect me as a chronic trauma event, and it is affecting me repeatedly, and I have prolonged exposure and I'm highly stressful. Those are mostly domestic violence and bullying situations, which is why this election period really falls under the complex or chronic category, because it is such a prolonged thing. It's been 4 years in the making, and it could potentially be 4 more years. And the idea to keep in mind is that a trauma can take sometimes twice as long to recover from. So if you have 8 years of trauma, it might take you 16 years to recover from that. You will be fine and you will function, but you will still find yourself being triggered by that trauma. So it's important to recognize what type of trauma you have so that you can recognize how long you're in the boat to fixing it. You're not just going to say, you know what, oh my God, that was rough and I can get over it real soon. No, that was hard and I need to take the time and the patience to get over it. Unaddressed trauma. When you ignore your trauma, it doesn't go away. You know, we go through life and we think, okay, that was rough. I got assaulted in the store, or I watched someone get assaulted, and I'm going to move on. But it's still affecting you, because when you watch a movie, it hits you a little bit different. When you go to the next place, you look at people a little bit different. And so that's mean it's not over and it's still affecting you. So it's important to not ignore your trauma, but actually go through and process it. Just being alone is not a healing mechanism. Ignoring it is not a healing mechanism. It allows it to fester and manifest in other parts and other ways of your body. You might notice that your your fingernails are breaking, your hair's falling out, your skin's just not the same. It manifests within your body different ways. Trauma, psychological, and mental health all eventually manifest themselves into a physical being within your body. Society is so quick to say, just get over it, get over this election. It's not that bad. It's already happened. It's been 4 years. No, we're still living this trauma. It's still happening. And so it's important for us to recognize that just because society or our sister-in-law says get over it, we're not going to get over it, no matter what they say or what we want to do. We want to get over it. We want to move on, but you have to go through the steps to get over it appropriately. There's a cycle of trauma, and this is the most important, is trauma starts with a trigger, and then you become re-traumatized. Then you go into the reaction and blame phase. Then you go to coping and avoidance. Then you get back under control. And under control can sometimes be your last phase. That means you've mastered your trauma, you're fine, until a trigger comes. And then you realize, I never fixed it in the process. I didn't do the proper steps when I was in the cycle to fix it. And that is what is truly going on right now with the election, is we're constantly being re-traumatized with the continued behaviors of our current president, with the continued actions that are going on in society as a result of our current president. So it's important for us to get to the back under control phase, so that when the triggers happen, when the president says something, when our brother says something, it doesn't become a trigger and snowball into all of the things that we're feeling. It just is a trigger for a new trauma, but that trauma doesn't have to become chronic or complex. It can just be a small acute trauma that you're over within 30 minutes. So it's important to make sure that you recognize your triggers so that you can address them instead of just ignoring them.
So Tatum, I'm sure that means you're gonna give us some advice on how to deal with the big stuff. So when those little things happen, we don't just
Yep.
explode.
Exactly. Because the important statement here is the real healing happens when the triggers are gone. When those little things happen, they're no longer a trigger. They're just a situation. It didn't trigger anything within you.
Will you say that again?
Say that again.
The real healing happens.
The real healing happens when the triggers are gone, because then it's not a trigger anymore. You know, your brother may say something about this election and it doesn't trigger you anymore. He's just allowed to say that, and I'm allowed to say. That's when you know I've really healed. The trauma is gone. But as long as his words still trigger you and make you upset, then you still got some healing to do.
Okay. And that reminds me too of what I shared. I definitely recommend everybody listens to that Brene Brown interview with, I'll show it to you in a second. Tatum, do you mind letting me share my screen for a second?
Of course, because Brene Brown is the end all be all of everything that I believe in.
So if you'll make me the host, I can do that again. And she interviewed a couple of ladies. They're actually twin sisters who wrote a book about completing the stress cycle. Christy and Angela, a couple of you guys recommended that to me. I guess you thought I looked stressed out or something. But what I love, I'll get it up here for you. What I loved about what she said is, this reminded me here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see it?
Yep.
Removing the stressors does not mean the stress cycle is complete. So that made me think, oh, so even if the election does go my way,
yep,
that means we still have some healing to do.
Yep, we still have work to do.
And then this was helpful. You have to signal to your body that you are now safe by sending it a body signal, pretty much, as you can't just like tell your brain you have to change something in your body. And so I'll just say this really quickly. They suggest 4 ways to complete the stress cycle. The best one they said is physical activity. So even just shaking for 30 seconds,
Yes.
or going on a run, or whatever that is for you, dancing. And then the second best one is the mindful breathing. So just really slowing down to feel your breath. And for all of us, this helps. For a lot of us, it really helps, the positive social interaction, which is harder right now. So that's why no matter what, we'll set up a Zoom chat. We'll have some more support groups available. We can even do some group walks, that kind of thing. And I love this one. I made my son do, I tried to make him do it this morning, but he's 13. A 20-second hug is literally what they suggest for signaling to your body. It's something about that pressure for 20 seconds. You're leaning in until you relax into it.
Mm-hmm.
So those were helpful to me for finishing that cycle of stress and then moving forward.
Yes. And those 4 things are all very beneficial. And the physical activity, sometimes, like you said, it's just shaking. It's just shaking it all out and getting it all out of your body, because it's manifesting in your core. And if you can shake it out of your core and get it all the way out to your fingertips and then just shake it off, then you will feel the relief. If it's a physical feeling you can feel. How I will also say that mindful breathing is a true statement, but you can take it a step further and do mindful activities. And
Okay.
that just may mean being completely mindful in the activity that you're in. And that can be washing the dishes. If I'm washing the dishes, then let me focus on the dishes, not focus on what's coming up next, not let me focus on how I need to wash the counters next. I'm just washing the dishes. Focus on whatever activity you're doing. And that's important, because then it allows your mind to be trained in how to focus. And once you do that, then you're able to do it in different avenues of things. So like in stress and in trauma, then you'll find ways to not focus on the stress and the trauma, and instead you can focus on the situation at hand.
Thank you, Tatum. I'm done sharing my screen. And I typed in there it's Brene Brown, Unlocking Us is her wonderful podcast, which is always good to listen to. And the interview is about a book, How to Complete the Stress Cycle. Yes, that's right. That's right. You got it. Definitely recommend that.
Okay, if you make me the host again,
Oh, I will. And so if we need it, anytime, I've got my singing bowl, my Tibetan singing bowl. I'll go get it here in a second. And I have a Miltone drum too that I used as a music teacher, and I always loved ending, even with preschool kids, with mindfulness, relaxation, and imagery. So we would, I would tell little stories while they were lying down, and it was so nice. And I never do that for myself, but I should.
Yep, those are very important. People don't realize it, but it is.
Okay, you got it.
All right. So one big thing that I want to talk about is trauma response versus trauma recovery. A lot of people think that their response to the trauma is the recovery process, and that's not it. And this is kind of in connection with what you were saying earlier, Laurie, is your response was to counteract whatever the president was saying and to do the exact opposite. And that is fair, that is appropriate, but that's not the long-term solution. The long-term solution is to have trauma recovery. And if you notice, the response is just a response. The recovery is the restoration and safety and empowerment. And that's where you're going to flourish, is when you have safety and empowerment. So that's why we're going to focus on recovery today. Trauma response is fight, flight, or freeze. We've all heard that, or if you haven't, welcome to the world of fight, flight, or freeze. And these are active responses. Sometimes they are feelings that your body you don't even know your body is doing. They are reactions, they are signals, as talked about in the stressor, that your body is sending to your brain of what to do before you even realize what you're doing. They're coping mechanisms, they are not conscious decisions, and they are automatic reactions that sometimes you can't control. You may want to run and you're frozen in place and you don't know why. And that's why it's important to recognize the difference between trauma response and trauma recovery, because in response, it's your body doing what's in the best interest of your body. In recovery, it's what's doing in the best interest of your whole body, your mind and body. During trauma, so many of your body parts are affected. And I just wanted to showcase this. Your heart rate increases, so more oxygen may come in, so it's bringing in more oxygen, or your oxygen may decrease. And your lungs may stop or restrict based on what's going on with your heart rate. Your pupils dilated, allowing in more light, so you have better vision. So it's almost like you're seeing things more clearly. You're hearing things better because your hearing sharpens. And your blood thickens, which increases clotting factors to prepare for the injury that's about to happen to you. It's preparing you to be hit with something strong. And so that's why sometimes when you're in the middle of stress or trauma, you feel your chest tighten up because all these things are happening. And your body's like, okay, we're ready for the big blow. We can handle it. And so that just shows that how it physically manifests within yourself, and you have to not allow the trauma to get so bad that the physical manifest lasts longer and it negatively affects you, and potentially you're in high blood pressure or anxiety or panic attack because of it.
So
So
Tatum, let's
yes.
just put out there, if you are watching, I'm just curious, I didn't do a poll for this, but I know some of us have been feeling panicky. Some, if anybody wants to comment about that, like what of these physical manifestations have you all been feeling, if any? I'm just curious. I know I
And some,
haven't. I've felt close to panic attack a couple of times, but I know we have people who've been having them. So
yeah, and sometimes you may have not even realized these things are happening to your body. I had someone in my circle just the other day who experienced trauma and came to me and seemed very calm. And we took their blood pressure and it was 217 over 179. And it's like, how do you not feel this? And it's because they were in trauma response and they weren't feeling all the things their body was going through. Their body was protecting them. So sometimes if you're feeling it, if you're feeling panicky, then it's probably been going on for far longer than you even realize.
okay.
Okay. So trauma recovery. So the goal of trauma recovery is to live in the present without being overwhelmed by the thoughts and feelings of the past. So we want to get to a point after November 3rd where we can live in the present. We can be mindful of our situation and our moments and not be overwhelmed by the thoughts and feelings. So if we get a new president, we're going to be excited and we want to be living in that moment of happiness and joy and not be overwhelmed by the past 4 years and the trauma that has happened. Because even if we get a new president, we're excited, we're still going to have to fix the previous 4 years. Like, so it's always going to be brought back up. It's always going to be, oh, we have to get rid of this that Donald Trump put into place, and we have to get rid of that. So it's still going to come up. And what we have to do is make sure that we're not re-traumatized every time his name is brought up, or something that he passed is brought back on the table and they're trying to
Well,
pass
and
it or.
he's gonna keep talking no matter what happens.
Mhm.
You said the previous 4 years, but yeah, we're trying to fix the previous 400 still, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. So we're in for a
there's a
long
lot
haul
of
with.
trauma.
Yeah.
a lot of trauma to fix that. I feel like a lot of it just is new, just kind of came up this summer to many people as a collectively.
And I think it came up this summer because of the pandemic forced us all to slow down. And so then it's like, hey, because I can't continue my life as I normally have, I'm able to see differently because we were in trauma response. Our ears were listening more, our pupils were more dilated. And so it just goes to show the different things that can happen when you're in trauma.
Yeah.
So trauma recovery can be a long process or it can be a short process. It may require additional professional, familiar, or relational support. So don't feel like you're less than for reaching out, and whoever you reach out to, as long as they're supportive of you, then you're doing the right thing. Don't feel less than for the uncertainty that comes along with it, especially when you're going through the same trauma as someone else. This election is going to bring about so many levels of uncertainty in people because Laurie may get over it sooner than I will. And then I'm going to feel like, why can't I get over it with Laurie, like Laurie did? She's moved on, she's living her life. And now I have more negative feelings of helplessness. And I'm going to isolate myself because Laurie's fine. And I'm still dealing with these issues. And she's not going to want to hear me complain all the time about them. Even if she does, those are the things that you tell yourself, and you can't do that. Because comparison is the root of all evil, as we know. Don't compare yourself to anyone else in their recovery process. So here's where we get important. The phases of trauma recovery. Phase 1 is safety and stabilization. Phase 2 is remembrance and mourning. And phase 3 is reconnection and integration. It seems like these phases come so easy and they're very simple, but they are long processes. And it's very important that you process each of them accordingly. You can't get to reconnection and integration if you haven't done safety and stabilization. You can't get to remembrance and mourning if you haven't done safety and stabilization. So you have to do them in the order they're presented. You skip around, jump to the next one, you'll find yourself right back at phase 1. You'll find yourself right back triggered.
So Tatum, when I was teaching mindfulness and discipline kind of stuff with parents and teachers, one of the phrases that we talked about was, and it could be holding a child tightly when they're having a tantrum, and just breathing with them, like, and then you repeat these 3 phrases: I am safe, I am breathing, I can handle this. And you just say it like on behalf of the child and to yourself too, because you're the parent of the tantruming toddler. So anyway, that's what I taught, but it's much harder to do in real life.
And I'm glad you say that, because the phases of trauma are easier to say, they're easy to write down, they're much harder to practice. So as I'm saying this, don't think that this is going to be easy. Oh, I'm in phase 1 and I'm moving on to phase 2 next week and I got this. That is not how it's going to work.
Is there like a little checklist and you pass the test and ding, go to the next one?
There is no checklist and no test. So
we like to get our gold stars though as we go through these phases.
You can definitely get your gold stars though. You will know when you're through a phase. You'll feel it. It's a new birth within yourself. You get it.
Can my gold star be a milkshake?
Oh, a chocolate one? Yes.
Sure.
So, safety and stabilization, phase 1. The persons affected by trauma usually feel unsafe in their own bodies. So regaining that sense of safety is important. It can take days, weeks, months, or years, depending on your trauma. And as Laurie said, it's important with those toddlers that you grab them and hold them tight and just practice their breathing, because they don't even feel safe within their own bodies. So we have to remind them that this is their safe place. Your body is your safe place. I know your mind is racing and you have all these crazy thoughts and all these bad things. However, you are safe right here and right now. And that's where it starts. You can't rush that process. You can do it with a toddler and you can hold them and you can comfort them, and it may happen within 5 minutes. However, they're still processing it once you let them go. So you have to give them time and space. When you let them go, they might go sit in that corner for a little while. They're not just going to jump back into the playground. So give yourself that time.
And
And I
Tatum,
put
you're saying that's good for toddlers, but like I feel like that's what I needed and wanted someone to do for me in 2016, was to hold me and tell me those things.
Mhm. And just like Brene Brown mentioned, the 20-second hug, it's the same process there. You're given the same process. And it's important, because we weren't prepared in 2016, that we're prepared now, and we recognize that, you know what, I need that. If I'm the person that needs a hug, then I need to get ready to have my hugs. I need to have my people lined up to start hugging me. If I'm the person that needs physical activity, then I need to get my running shoes on my feet. So when they say something, then I can go run around the house, or I can dance, or, whatever it is that you do, get prepared for it so that you can get your safe place established first. And I put this example because this put it into the most perspective for me. Is the experience of trauma is similar to that of a shaken soda bottle. Inside the bottle is a tremendous amount of pressure. The safest way to release this pressure is to open and close the bottle slowly each time, releasing a little bit and a little bit. Because if you open it all the way, then you got a huge explosion. And so it's important that you can ration out your feelings, and that's how you do it, through physical activity and the 20-second hug, so it doesn't all need to come out at once. It can simmer down before it comes out. So I say immediately go to your physical safety place. It's important to identify this beforehand. So specifically with this election, you need to identify more than one support person to check in on you. And that's going to be regularly throughout the night, throughout the week, and give them specific instructions. Assign each person a check-in task. So you might have friend A that's a distractor. So for the next 7 to 10 days, they're just going to text you distracting messages, funny jokes, memes, memories about that time we went to Las Vegas and you lost your shoe. That's what's going to be important to help you not just constantly focus on what is going on in the world, directly related to this election. Then you need to have your person that's going to be your processor. You're going to ask them to text you, and they can call you. It doesn't have to be a text. It's whatever you're comfortable with. Text, email, phone call. I'm a big texter, so I relate everything to a text. But you can ask them to text you to see how you're processing things and what you're seeing throughout the night and the week, so that you have that voice to bounce it off of. Now that may be your husband or your partner, your wife, but you have that person that you can just say, are you seeing this? This is crazy. Look at those results. Oh my God. So you have that one person that you can go to and process through things. The third person that you want to have is your support person. And that's your person that's going to be supportive of you and give you motivation and send you all the positive messages. That's the person that's going to send you Brene Brown quotes throughout the day. That's the person that's going to send you the meme that says, we got this, we can keep going. So those are the main 3 people you want to have in your corner, and establish them before election night, because they are also processing this, so that you want to talk to them and see what they can do. Can you be this person or that person or that person? I am the person that's the distractor. I have a phone full of memes and funny jokes. I'm ready for you. But you have to give that person time to prepare. So make sure that you talk to your people now. We have, a week, so that they can compile all their lists and be ready. If they need to get their motivational messages ready, they get them. If they are checking on you, they can figure out how to check on you and what you need. And you can establish with them what your trigger words are. So maybe when I text you a saxophone, I want to say, oh my God, did you see this bull crap that he just pulled? Or if I text you a pie, it means I can't believe what I just saw. You know, that is for you to establish with your people, but it's important to establish your people.
Okay, so Tatum, can we be those people for each other even if we're both going through the trauma?
You can, as long as you're not the same person. I can't be your distractor if you're my distractor,
Okay. Yeah.
but I can be your processor and you can be my distractor, but we can't be the same person for each other.
Yeah. And it also reminds me that, um, oh, I just lost my train of thought because I see Mackenzie's here. Yay, Mackenzie.
So, all right. Well, if you think of it, we'll come back.
Okay.
Remembrance and Mourning is phase 2. This is where your hard work begins. You're processing your trauma, you're giving it a name, giving it a face, attaching emotions to it, making meaning out of it. This part often involves a professional, but it's not necessary to have a professional. This is your longest phase. You may still be in phase 1 while you're in phase 2, but you're going to be in phase 2 for the longest amount of time. Do not move fast in this phase. You get overwhelmed and you just want to process through these feelings and move on. I should be over this. I should be over this election. I should not be thinking about Trump anymore. He's been president for 4 years. Who cares about 2016? You can't say those things to you. You have to process through them and pace yourself. Um, the important takeaway is pace yourself in this phase. You don't want to relive the trauma or delete the emotions, but you rather feel them and process through them to take you to a new space.
So are you saying that we might need this phase even if the election goes our way?
If the election goes your way, you're going to need this phase even more, because what's going to happen is now you're going to have people on the other side that are going to push harder, because now they feel betrayed and they feel mourned. So they're going to push harder for why their points are right, why their president should have won. And you have to prepare yourself for, how am I going to feel, and take away what, and not take away from what I just dealt with the last 4 years, and appreciate the next 4 years. Because if you don't, then you're going to be constantly living in the traumatic trigger phase, because everything they say to you is going to be a trigger and it's going to take you back to 2016. And so it's important that you pace yourself and not relive 2016, and instead say, you know what, I'm in a new space and I'm not going to let you take me back to 2016 feelings, despite what you're saying.
What was the name of phase 1?
Phase 1 was safety and stabilization.
Okay, I know what I was going to say, Tatum, is that in being someone's person, if you're going through the trauma yourself, it kind of gives you a sense of purpose too, right? And doing something nice for someone else always helps.
And it definitely can help you process your trauma by helping someone else. So specifically in the selection process, I would say explore and acknowledge your feelings. Don't ignore them. Don't allow them to be belittled by anyone else who may be on the opposite side of what you believe in. Support your feelings. If I feel triggered, if I feel upset, then let me feel upset. Don't come at me and tell me that I'm wrong. Don't, and that's where it's important to allow to put yourself in a circle where people are allowing you to feel those feelings. And that's where it's important to have your 3 people lined up, because those people are going to allow you to do that. They're going to give you that space, and they're going to distract you and support you and let you process all of those things. They're not going to belittle you. I would also recommend that you write down how you're feeling, because it can change so often and so quickly. And the format that I recommend is, I'm doing blank and I feel blank because blank. I'm doing the dishes and I feel upset because I just heard what Trump said. You know, you have to put a face and a name and a situation to your feelings. And that's how you're going to be able to get past them and not be triggered by them. Because now you can say, you know what, why every time am I washing the dishes am I upset? Oh, because the last time I was washing the dishes, I was feeling crappy because that's when Trump got on TV and said X, Y, and Z. So if you start to do that, then you can start to recognize, and then you can go into these behaviors or these situations such as washing the dishes and just say, you know what, I'm going to be mindful and focus on how beautiful my plates are instead of allowing it to become a trigger and starting your whole trauma cycle all over again. So that's why it's important to write them down, because they may change so often. Make sure you tell your support persons about your feelings and your current status. Those 3 people you've gotten lined up, and I don't want you to limit it to 3 people. You can have 6 people, 2 of them for each job. You can have 9 people. It doesn't matter, but assign them a job and a duty. And those people, let them know how you're doing. Make sure you check in with them and say, you know what, today I'm feeling, and why and what you're doing. Just like the format before. And it doesn't have to be a whole long message, just so that they know how you're feeling, so that they can formulate how they can best support you. And especially over the next week, because we're going to have ups and downs and ins and outs, and we have to be ready and mourn any losses associated with the trauma. This election and this presidency has brought about a lot of losses in friends and family, and you have to mourn those losses. Mourning is a whole separate process. Grieving and mourning is a separate process. That is the reason why phase 2 can be so long, because you have to go through that grieving and mourning process as well.
You're saying grieving and mourning is separate from what?
Grieving and mourning is a separate process than the trauma recovery, than this phase 2, but it's under that, and that's why it makes phase 2 so long.
Okay. Yeah, and I feel like, yes, if he were to win, we have to take care of ourselves so that we can keep doing the good work that we're doing. That's so important for saving lives. But there will be a lot to mourn and to grieve. So I don't really know what we mourn well, and I guess if it goes our way, my way, then we mourn and grieve the divisiveness. We mourn and grieve the political divide that we still are existing in, that continues.
Right. And you may mourn and grieve the loss of friendships and families. That's going to change. You may mourn and grieve the loss of businesses that may close, or what have you, how they crumble because they no longer have the same support that they once had, or because the person who owns it said, oh, my president didn't win and I give up, and they close. There's gonna, your favorite restaurant could close because of that, and that may seem minimal, but that is a grieving process that you have to go through. Maybe you went to that restaurant for comfort every time you were stressed, and now it's lost. Like, it's important that you mourn all the losses that you are going to have in the next, week or so of the election.
Yeah, and Tatum, I don't know if this is a good time for this, but I do want to acknowledge that this isn't the only difficulty going on in the lives of so many people, including yourself. And some people have loved ones in the hospital for varied reasons. They've lost their jobs, just all of the stress, financial stress. They are mourning someone who's died this year. And this election on top of that, what do you recommend to someone like that? I mean, my gut is to say to those people, hey, your only job right now is to vote, and then we're going to work on the rest. There are enough people doing the good work. You can take that off your shoulders. But how can I check in with you? How can I help you? Is it okay for some people to have permission to just focus on themselves?
It is okay to give the people permission to focus on themselves. Now, as the outsider, that is the appropriate thing to do, is give them space and permission to focus on themselves. Inside of that, I say to the person processing all that, it's important that you process each thing individually. If you have 4 things you're going through, give yourself time to process one for 1 hour, one for 1 hour, one for 1 hour, one for 1 hour, because it's going to be too overwhelming to process all four for 4 hours. But if you give it 1 hour and 1 hour and 1 hour, then you can feel like, you know what, let me focus on just the fact that cousin Timmy is in the hospital and I need to cook dinner for his wife and his kids, and that's all I'm going to focus on. It's almost like mindfulness in the fact of your trauma. So I'm going to mindfully focus on one trauma at a time. Otherwise, you will get so overwhelmed you won't function and do anything for any of them.
Yeah. So, I mean, and what should I do? Gosh, I mean, what I know, and it shouldn't be this way, but we have people. I have a friend who lost her mom and her dad this summer. And if this election doesn't go this way, it will feel personal. It will feel just like too much, you know? I mean, what do I do for her?
You know, the best thing you can do for her, and everybody is different, so I preface this with, this is just a generic answer, but the best thing you can do for her is to continue to reach out and continue to be present and support her in any way that she's asking, and then support her in the way you would want to be supported. So, you know, continue to send cards in the mail, continue to send a text message of something exciting, you know, and not exciting, oh, my child is having a play, please come, but exciting in, I'm thinking about you today. Continue to do those things. And then, you know, when you think about it, say, you know what, maybe I'll send her dinner on Saturday just so that she doesn't have to deal with going out or thinking about what to cook. And, you know, send her a text message on Friday and say, hey, I'm sending you dinner tomorrow. And she may not respond, she may not be responsive to you, but you're supporting her. And when she's ready to focus on that, then she will definitely reach out and let you know how much she appreciates all of those things.
Yeah. And I know you've said before, if we're looking for signs of extreme depression, one place to look is social media. And if now some people are taking breaks now for the election, which is understandable. But if they go silent for a long time, or if they start posting a lot more,
Yep.
then that's a good reason to check in on them.
Change in habits is definitely what it is. So it's social media presence. If you're going silent or if you're constantly posting, it's if you're used to seeing your neighbor walk by every day for a walk and you haven't seen them for a couple days, you know, or maybe you're seeing them every hour now. Just a change in normal habits is a sign that you probably need to just do something a little different to support them.
Okay.
So phase 3 is the reconnection and integration phase. This is the phase that you're creating your new sense of self and your new future. It's the final task and it's full of important steps. Reaching this phase showcases growth and redefinition. At this point, the trauma no longer defines your life choices and it's integrated as part of your life story. It's not your life story, it's integrated into your life story. You recognize the impact the trauma had within you, and you are using it towards your empowerment and self-determination. Specifically in this election process, when you recognize that you are no longer debilitated by the outcome of the election results is when you're in phase 3. This might not be until 2024. This might not be until 2030. However, you will get there. You'll be able to establish meaningful connections as a new person that you've become. This traumatic event, this previous 4 years, the next presidential election, and probably the next 4 years after that, are going to make you into a new person, whether you want to or not. Just as you just discussed, Laurie, the loss we've felt this year through death, through COVID, through systemic racism, we are new people. And this election has made us want to see a new presidency for the new person that we have become so that we can be supported and feel embraced in becoming this new person. And as you establish who that new person is when you're going to make new connections. And that's why it's important that you properly process the loss of the friendships and relationships that you once had because you're a new person. You're growing and transitioning into someone new. I put it into
I
connection.
want us to grow and transition into a new kind of nation too.
Mhm. And that's going to happen with each individual growing and changing into this new person. And that person has to become a positive person. And it only becomes a positive person if you go through the proper steps of trauma recovery. If you try to become a new person and do this phase 3 before you've done phase 1 and 2, is when you become that negative person that's still angry, that's still unhappy. Well, I guess my computer timed out. I'll have to let it load again. And so if you're going through trauma cycle and you're doing phase 3 before you've done phase 1, then what happens is you establish all these new friendships and make this new person, and you really haven't become that person. So then you get triggered and all your friends are like, what the heck just happened to Laurie? She just flipped and she's a new person and we don't even know what she's talking about and why she's doing that. That's not the Laurie I got to know. And it's because you weren't being who your new person is supposed to be. You were just being who you thought society wanted you to be, who you felt you should be. And so it's important to go through the steps so that you can become this new positive person that you were meant to be.
Ooh, that's deep. That's deep.
Yeah. Trauma recovery is important and it's deep. It is. You will find your mission and continue to grow and heal without being triggered. You will find your healing from public speaking, mentoring, and sharing your journey. It'll be about making everybody hear all that I'm feeling and what I just endured and how I overcame it. Even if they don't want to hear, you're going to be like, yeah, the company Christmas party. Let me tell you about what happened in 20, they're going to be like, oh my God.
They're like, I know what happened.
So, um, but phase 3 can last for many years and it can even last for your entire lifetime. You just may feel that satisfaction, that peace for the rest of your life and never be triggered by a presidential election again. And that's
Oh,
fine.
let's go for that.
You can be triggered by many other things, but a presidential election may never trigger you again. It may, but it won't trigger you back to 2016. It'll just trigger you for that time.
That's great.
So, my overall takeaways is that trauma comes in many styles. Trauma response is not trauma recovery. Trauma recovery is a process that varies. Pay attention to your red flags. These are typically your triggers or a pre-trigger. And this becomes your point of redirection. When you're headed in a wrong direction, you're going to see a red flag. You're going to have a trigger. You need to stop, reevaluate, and pick your next steps carefully. Usually it means you need to turn around and go back and figure it out again. You may not know why you're having an internal sense or you're feeling in that moment, but you know it doesn't feel right. Just pay attention and trust yourself. Don't ignore it. Don't brush it off. It's an important time to pause and ask yourself, what about this bothers me? So that you can figure out what the trigger truly is. It's not just this situation. It's not just sitting in this chair. It's the fact that the left arm of the chair is crooked that bothers me. So it's important to figure out what truly bothers you. And that's an important time to journal. I am fully in support of journaling and writing things down, not only so that you can get it out of your physical body and your mind and onto paper so it no longer is manifesting within yourself, but because once it's on paper, then it becomes real and you can process it better. You can go back and read it when you're in a more positive mindset and make sense of it. When you can't just do that letting the thoughts focus in your head. It is so vital to establish your support circle with your 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 friends. Establish your support keywords and your safety keywords, and establish your support styles. So let your friends know how they can help you. Like we talked about, is it a text? Is it a phone call? Is it a drop by? Is it a mail? Drop a letter in the mail or a card. I personally got a card in the mail and it says, excuse my language, it says you've survived 100% of your bad days. You're a badass.
Mhm.
I have no idea who that card came from. It was not addressed to, now it was from my hometown, so I know it was from somebody back home. But those are the things that you can do to support someone, and you don't have to have recognition for it. You don't have to, but you know that's their support style, so that's what you're going to do for them. And so that's why it's important to establish that with your people, with your circle.
That's awesome.
And so that's what I have. I'm open for questions, or we can call it done.
Tatum, can you release the polls, just push end, and then I think there's a button to push publish, so we'll see what that says. Oh, there it is. So let's see. Let's look at what makes you feel better after a hard day, because maybe we can do some of this together. It looks like, oh, a lot of people said a drink with a good friend and a walk with a good friend. So maybe we could do some walks together. We've got like a milkshake date going on over here. So we might do that too. And we'll definitely do just a Zoom gathering on November 4th, no matter what, to check in with everybody. Um, I was going to say, Tatum, I'm sure there are some people that are so invested. They're afraid of, they might be recovering alcoholics or drug users, and they're nervous about, is it called falling off the wagon?
Yeah. Yeah.
What can we do to support them?
I think the important thing for them is to ask them what they need, because sometimes they can still go to events and bars and choose not to drink or choose not to do drugs, and sometimes they can't. And so you ask them what they can do, and then you plan events around that. So, you know, if your trigger is to be in a bowling alley that serves alcohol, then you know what, we're going to go, as the chat is saying, to Andy's and have ice cream. That there's no trigger there.
Mhm.
So it's just important to just include them as part of the planning process.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to change the whole plan, because sometimes it's not a big deal for them.
Okay. Good. But I think just being mindful of and people who struggle with depression too, that this can be a hard time.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you guys type any specific questions that you might have, and I'll play my singing bowl.
Yes. Oh, I love that. It keep in mind that anybody struggling with depression, they're likely not going to be responsive to your messages. They're likely going to turn down any offers to go somewhere, to do anything. So you just have to be persistent and patient with them. And maybe it's just, we don't go to Andy's, and I'll pick up Andy's and come sit on your couch with you for a couple
Yeah. And what I know is that no matter what happens, we're going to keep doing good things. And I like your word about responding instead of reacting. And so if it doesn't go our way, we will feel better and make the world better in our intentional responses,
of.
that as a group that we do. And that will give individuals a good outlet for feeling better, as well as making the world a better place. I believe
Yeah.
we'll do those things even if it does go our way too. we'll just we'll just be a little happier about it. This is my
Oh, I like that one.
yes. Well, thank you, Tatum. You're awesome. Oh good, you liked it. Yes. Okay,
Oh,
so
you're welcome, Amy.
I was a little worried about even going there in my mind, but oh wait, now Tatum, you told me something about writing down like step number 1 and maybe putting it in a little box or something just in case you need it after the election. Like, I don't have to think about it, I don't have to worry about it, but if it goes this way, step number 1 I go to and it says um call Christy, and
Mhm.
something like that. So I
Mhm.
thought that was a good idea too.
Yep, and that is Along the lines of safety and stability, when you're figuring out who your people are and you're figuring out the best way to communicate with them, make sure you write that down. You know, I have Christy and she's going to be my processor. And so what you're doing is you write them down, you can put them in a box, put them in a jar. And then what happens is when you're struggling, when you're in that place of how do I even start to reach out to people? How do I even know what safety looks like? You can go to your jar and pull it out.
Okay.
How I discussed it in the presentation was to establish that with Christy beforehand. So you don't have to reach out to Christy on
Okay.
November 3rd or the 9th or the 10th,
Okay.
but you've already established that. But in the event of other types of trauma that may come before you're prepared or that you don't have time to prepare for, you can write them down and have them established within your box so that when you're struggling, you're like, oh my God, what is going on with me today? You just reach in and grab, and it says,
And it
call
was distractor, processor. What was the third one? Encourager.
encourager.
Okay. But you also might even need someone saying, I think you suggested to me before, like having someone whose job was just to check in and say, did you sleep last night? Did you eat today? Like that, what would that be? That would just be like functioning.
Yeah, that's going to also be your processing person because
Okay.
they're going to make sure that you're processing appropriately. So you're processing life, you're processing what you're seeing, you're processing. So that's where you have to establish what you need from your processor, what you need them to do for you.
Okay.
So, you know, you may not need the person to tell you to shower. You may need them to process what you saw on TV. You know I always have that friend and I say, oh my God, did you see what happened on channel 4? And they always tell me yes. And even though they live in a whole nother state and their channel 4 is very different than mine, they always tell me yes, like they did. So I know they're lying to me, but I feel good. And that's what that person is there for.
Or maybe you have a person that says, every day at 4 o'clock, I'm going to drag you out and we're going to go for a walk. Just
Mm-hmm.
think of what those things are that make you feel better and
Yep.
set them up in advance. That's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. And Tatum, thank you so much. And I hope that you know what, we've done what we can do. If we've voted, we've done what we can do. Tomorrow and on Tuesday, there will be long lines at the polls. So if you want to just be a kind person, you can get out there and share some water or snacks or pizza with the voters in line. That's what I'm going to do. And beyond that, it's out of our control, right?
Right. Right. We will be prepared for it.
Let it go.
Yes.
And know that we are going to be okay no matter what. Right, Tatum?
Yes, we will.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was reading the comments.
I was like, no.
Yes, we are. We are going to be okay. We are going to come out on top of all of this, whether whether our person wins or not, we are going to come out on top because we're going to be prepared to do the good trouble.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so no matter what, we make good trouble and we'll be here for each other. That's wonderful. That's what's wonderful about this. Thank you, Tatum. Everybody sleep well.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye, everybody.